I'm good.
We posted, we're posting ads. Interviews, probably in mid-December.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Northampton County Council Budget Meeting. This is the Human Services Department today. We have any courtesy of the floor? Hearing and seeing none, we'll start on page 149 in the White Book. Program summary is on page 150. So can I ask at the front, I realize that the calendars for some of this money is different than our calendar, correct? Some of the payments are July 1st, June 30th, correct? Is that your overall budget or just different departments?
The vast majority are county fiscal year. There's drug and alcohol money that operates on the federal fiscal year. There might be one or two others, but it's primarily drug and alcohol is the only division that operates also on a federal year.
And the intergovernmental decrease, is that because we are not getting as much funding in pass-through, or can you
No,
identify?
none of our allocations went down. Some of them, the drug and alcohol money in particular, is to your question before, is part of the federal fiscal year. So we have not seen a decrease in any of our divisions across the board in funding.
Ms. Wondolowski? Sorry.
You might as well hang out with us.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
just hang out. I've been doing some outreach to various state legislative offices as of late with regard to mental health funding and with regard to any sort of early intervention funding as well. I hate to say if you had a choice as to an increase in funding that we could potentially get from the Commonwealth, where would that be? What program would you dedicate more funding to if you had the ability to do it? I mean, instead of like all of them, of course.
That's a terrible question.
I know, it stinks.
That is like choosing between children.
That's right.
But I mean, is early intervention where we
Early
really need
intervention is
to?
an entitlement program.
Right.
So we spend as much as we spend there to serve whoever needs services, and the government, the state and federal government reimburse us.
Yeah,
So that's not about more money from our perspective for that program.
okay. About health choices.
So they're still, they're just finishing up rate negotiations for their rates for next year, but certainly I would be happy if anybody would like to advocate for increased per member per month reimbursement rates for medical assistance, for sure.
What's the rate now?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Not
And it's
sure.
still being, we're still in the process of signing the contracts for 2025. I'm not sure it's a done deal. It's more than this year and less than the BIMCOs, the behavioral health folks asked for.
No, but I meant, what's the rate currently, not what's being proposed? That would-
I would have to get that for you.
She's in the back, Shemina. I want to say thank you to you and your departments for one thing, is that when we lobbied at CCAP, one of the feedback that came back to us from the state was, why are you asking for so much money when counties are leaving so much money on the table? And I said, well, it's Northampton. She goes, well, I'll check. And she said, you did not leave $1 on the table. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Because
Very
it's,
good.
it's hard to go and advocate and then hear, well, you're not spending the allocations that you
sure.
have. So I appreciate that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing with the dollars that were given. We would hope to get you more next year, but.
Thank you.
One of the reasons why I want to reach out to state legislative offices here in Northampton County, and quite frankly, even in the Lehigh County area, since Lehigh Valley, we are one community in a lot of ways, is that we consistently hear of so many ills within our society, whether it is school shootings, and thank goodness we haven't had any here in Northampton County. There've been close calls, I know that for sure. I think this year in 2024, have there been 4 youth that have committed suicide within our school districts? I believe 4 or 5 teenagers.
The last that I heard, it was 4 or 5 that died by suicide,
That died
correct?
by suicide. Unacceptable, of course.
Yep.
We need more mental health funding. Folks are always talking about, okay, it's mental health, you know? Well, let's start getting some more mental health funding into our communities. And it's one of the reasons why I'm reaching out to our state legislative delegation, meeting with individuals to legislative offices, I should say, about how we can start getting more funds here in Northampton County. We're one of the largest metropolitan areas here in the state. I think we need to get a little bit more funding here for mental health services, for sure.
Sustainable as well, not one-time
It's a
pots of money.
fantastic word, absolutely, absolutely. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions on the overall budget? Okay. Human Services Administration funds? No questions? Moving into human service grants. Nothing. Human Services Facility. Any questions? Information and referral and emergency services. So the overtime that they're paid, is that for calls only, or do they have to go out and sometimes stay and do one-to-ones until they're transferred to someone else's care? Or is it mostly just,
Oh, the overwhelming majority is the after-hours, 24/7 crisis and emergency services.
And what's the length, like, what's the longest that somebody's had to stay with a case before it got handed off?
They work in shifts, so it's
So someone will relieve?
correct.
How many staff are in that department now?
Page 16 and 17.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wrong book. Only 10 people. And do they do the 988 calls too? Or is that a separate, that's a separate division? Okay. Any questions from Ms. Wondolowski? Next, we have Veterans Affairs. Any questions? Next, we have Gracedale Nursing Home. Are there any questions? Gracedale staff is here. Jen, can I ask a few questions?
Good evening.
So it looks like your overtime is down significantly, which I'm sure is good news for you,
Yes, very much.
since the COVID years. How are we doing with the staffing from agency?
It's being reduced. We're actually hired 11 new employees in various departments, so that's wonderful news for us. Oh, 1.5 less in agency.
And are we still, how are we doing with the short-term rehab funds? How is that bearing out to the bottom line?
Very good. very, very good. We get, I can tell you, I've been looking at the Lehigh Valley referrals, and so far this month, I think I'm up to, just for them, like 42.
How many beds do we have dedicated to that?
There are 32 on that floor. We're up from the other short-term rehab, which was 27, so good news.
And is the daycare staff infused into your budget, or is that a contracted service and they pay their own?
They'll be
Staff.
infused into the county budget, or, yep, our budget.
So they'll be our employees?
Well, no, they're going to be their employees, but we'll,
When we went over the HR budget, we moved those funds into the HR budget. We are contracting with an outside service to provide all of that. They will not be our employees, they will not be part of our benefits.
Okay.
Any revenue that comes back in will go back into the HR budget, so it will not be part of Graysdale. Any revenue that comes in from assistance and whatnot, if people are eligible for that, that will go back into the HR budget to offset the cost to the county of the daycare. We went over all that during the human resources part.
Anybody else have questions? We're good.
thank you.
Thank you for being here. Mental health is next. Any questions? Next, we have developmental programs. No questions? Early intervention? No questions? Children, youth, and families. I have one question. It's a painful one to ask. So under subcontracted client services, it's a huge amount of money, which I'm afraid to ask this. Is that money that we use to maintain people in out-of-home placements or even long-term residential placements?
That's all of our subcontracted services, so that's not just foster homes and residential, that's anything that's not covered by, an evidence-based grant funding is encompassed into that.
Okay.
On page 183, there's an all-inclusive list of what has gone into that 22 or 24 million dollars.
I see the grants, but I'm just concerned about how many people that we have out of, in placements.
This is why Northampton County needs a CASA program.
Just to clarify.
Commercial break.
Big time.
Just to clarify, when we got here, there was approximately 320 youth in out-of-home care. And as of Monday of this week, there were 173 youth in out-of-home care.
And it's not a reflection on you or your staff, it's just a reflection on the state of what is. And knowing that some of those are in longer-term, more expensive placements is the hardship, but, kudos for that. Any other questions? Next, we have Area Agency on Aging. Santa's coming. How are we doing with staffing there? Only in terms of, knowing that there's more and more need with that population, are you feeling well-staffed in terms of case management or?
I don't want to jinx it, but we're looking on the bright side in aging, and we have a few vacancies, but we have been able to fill the vast majority of our positions.
And if the need would increase, is that money that would again be
The state
available
would have
through
to,
the
the
state?
state would have to provide us with that, and they did that a few years ago with protective services.
Is
So-
there a ratio that they have to, so many
Caseload
cases
size?
per staff, yeah?
The protective services in particular, the state likes that to be 30 cases or less. Sometimes that's realistic, sometimes that's not.
Anyone else have questions? Drug and alcohol? Drug and alcohol opioid funds. Are we expected to get any more disbursements from that fund? I mean, or is this, are there still cases pending, or is this it? I mean, I know we're getting it over the course
Sure.
of years, but those are just, I think there's one or two, or how many more do we anticipate?
I don't know how many more there are. I think they're still finalizing the details for the most recent one. I mean, I think we know roughly what we'll be getting. I don't, whatever we already know is in this budget, and I suspect, yes, there will be more to come.
And the $100,000 on the vehicle, is that
That is the mobile outreach vehicle that is being built and is supposed to be done in January.
and then who's gonna staff that? Sorry, I assume it's its own team, right? Or no, is it your staff?
Last year's budget, we hired we added a program specialist to help oversee all of the opioid settlement-funded programs. And she will be the primary person with the mobile outreach vehicle, but we'll be partnering with all sorts of community providers to actually best serve the community.
Health choices? Any questions? Human services cost allocation. Okay, if there's nothing else, then we can adjourn. Do you need to make an announcement about the budget amendments, or are you going to do that? Okay. They're due next Friday, and that meeting will be, so any budget amendments are due in writing to Aileen and the office staff by next Friday, close of business, which is the 22nd. And the meeting will be held on the 26th of November to review at 4:30?
Yes. We will be sending you an email that shows you the format that the budget amendment should come in, and you always have to keep in mind that it's a zero sum. So anything that you give or take has to be given or taken from somewhere else in the budget that is eligible to be taken from.
Don't mind me asking, what happens at the budget amendment hearing itself? Being new, I'm not 100% sure. What happens at the actual hearing?
So if people have amendments that they want to propose, they'll be presented, and then people will vote to put them forward, and that's the whole process that day. And
Okay.
then they get officially voted on as part of, and adopted as part of the budget during the
Okay,
regular meeting, but that's the day where you can propose things.
And during that meeting also, we will be presenting you with the information for all the personnel changes. So at the beginning of the budget, you'll see like the different position changes to add or subtract.
Okay.
And we'll have all of those ready for you at that meeting as well.
okay, great. Thank you.
Haley, you might want to tell them it's got to be